Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of Heresy Hammer. My name is Rob, and today I'm not joined by anybody. So it's just me on my lonesome today because I'm going to go through the Civil War Plus rules because we have got the Civil War event on next week, and I wanted to talk to you guys about a little bit of background about it. But also, I want to talk about the rules in depth. So if you are attending the event, this kind of episode will be really, really useful. It's a completely slimmed down episode, this one. So it's mainly designed. I'll put it up for everybody to see, but it is really mainly designed for those people interested in playing Civil War Plus rules, but for those people particularly attending the event as well, because I want to go through a couple of little bits that the more complex elements of the rule set that people might not be familiar with. So, just a little bit of background. So, last year, I was invited over to Finland to do my Kratos course, and that was great. I had a brilliant time. But one of the things that made it really, really special was I got to go and play some games over at the Warhead studio. Now, these guys are a group of guys, bunch of amazing and really talented hobbyists in it for all the right reasons. And when I went over, myself and some others who were on the course, we kind of just a small group of us, we went and played their Civil War rule set, which they had been in the process of creating. I think we were kind of the guinea pigs. And we play tested it, and it was absolutely brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Small little skirmish games, some really tight rules restrictions around it. It wasn't high stakes at all. It felt very much like playing like a Zone Mortalis games with some friends. This place, if you've not been before or not seen inside it, the actual studio is just a hobbyist dream, particularly a Horus Heresy hobbyist dream. And if you go over to their blog, their website, they do have a YouTube channel coming. They've got all the usual social media stuff, but their blog is really, really in detail and in depth. And it really is proper like old school, right? Is when I first got into the hobby and people had like blogs about their Horus Heresy armies before kind of like YouTube really, really kind of like kicked it off, and Instagram and things like that. But they've got an old school blog, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's jam packed full of inspirational, like hobby projects, some amazing paintings, some amazing conversions. But within there, you will find the Civil War rule set. Now, as I said, this rule set is basically designed for kind of smaller skirmish games, 500 points. And when I played, I had an amazing time, really, really fun, really low stakes. And I often say this on the channel that 3K games and 2.5K games, I often find them quite high stakes, even at narrative events, or what people would describe as narrative events. Whereas this was just a bit of a laugh in the evening with some mates. And I was kind of thinking, how do I transport this over to the UK? How do I spread the word? And maybe how do I expand this a little bit? To be a one-day event. How can I just make it slightly bigger to maybe be 1,000 points? So Civil War Plus was born. But I think it's important to say that I could not have come up with this rule set had it not been for the Warhead guys kind of blazing a trail. And then I could not have come up with a rule set if we hadn't have play tested it with my friends from Berkshire who I play with regularly. So thanks to all those people involved in creating the Civil War Plus rule set. The event is on Sunday, the 16th of March. All the tickets have now sold out. They sold out pretty quickly. I don't think we announced that it sold out, but it had sold out fairly quickly. So we're really, myself and Kerry are really looking forward to seeing you guys at the event as well, and should be something a little bit different. It's definitely, I feel, with Civil War, a little bit of evolution on the smaller games that we used to have in 1.0. I think it was the Centurion rule set where you had like one dread and quite a lot of infantry, and it was capped at a certain points level. And you had kind of less tanks at that points level. And I think that this is just kind of like a nice evolution in 2.0 from the I think it was the guys in Australia who could kind of create the Centurion rule set. But I think this is a nice 2.0 kind of rule set. So If you go over to the Warhead guys page onto that, if you just click on that top bar, Warhead Civil War, you will find the one page of rule set there. Although they've got some more description about how things work. What I've done for the event and what I will upload to all our social media. This will be easiest to download off Facebook or the Patreon if you want to join us over there. Is a two-pager. Now, this will basically has all the missions that you'll need. It has everything explained about how to build your army and how it actually works as well. But basically, attendees to the event will need this to be able to play. But what I would say is, if you guys want to play at home, then all you need is this two-pager. You don't need, like what I've tried to do is just really slim down everything for you guys. So all you really need is this, your army, your dice, your tape measures, and then you're good to go. You're good to go for a day's gaming with a few friends of yours. You get them around, or a weekend event that you've got planned, maybe a Warhammer World or something. You just play this rule set. But hoping that this is useful and just a useful touchstone that you guys can call on. Just have it folded in your bag, in your dice box or whatever, and you can just play this when you feel like it. So the rules for this kind of skirmish-based Horus Heresy game are very different in terms of the force organization and the list building that you would find kind of in normal games of Horus Heresy. The whole point is that you can be a lot looser and a lot freer with what you create. That's kind of the most important thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through the rules now, and some of the nitty gritty stuff. And I'm hoping that this is going to be useful for those guys attending the event, particularly around the turn activation. That's the bit I really want to go into detail with, but also for you guys if you do want to play at home. So in terms of the Civil War Plus patrol detachment, you got 1,000 points, can't exceed that. Your force must be made up of single factions, so you get no allies. You've got to have one minimum compulsory troops choice. You've got no model with more than 3 wounds, and we included that just because it's easier for Mechanicum players to be able to work off that and bring Thalax and things like that if we max it up to three, which again is, I think, slightly different to the way that the Warhead guys did it. So you can see here that I'm just trying to encapsulate it, try and get as many armies to like an event as possible. Maximum of 1 model with 2+ armor save. Any vehicles 3 combined armor face values may not exceed 33. So that will be good, I think, because we'll see rhinos as we usually do, but we might see some stuff like sabers as well, which I think would be pretty good in that in Civil War. No rights of war of any kind, and actually, I feel quite strongly that you don't really need rights of war. Sure, there are some buffs like rage coming out of a tank if you're taking Templar Brethren assault, right? However, I mean, you can't even get a Land Raider, so don't need that. But the force organization chart is basically gone for this event. You can build your army how you want, as long as you got your 1 compulsory troops choice, and then you could just take like 6 squads of seekers if you want. That's absolutely fine. It's totally free. You basically take what you want as long as you've got your 1 compulsory troops choice. So if you want to build a seeker based force, you absolutely can do that. There's no problem with doing that, and you don't require a right of war to be able to unlock that. Remember, the force organization chart is gone. It's just 1 compulsory troops choice, and then you're away. You can max out whatever, with the exception of probably the HQs. No warlords or warlord traits of any kind. So anything that unlocks an additional reaction, can't have that. Anything that unlocks different buffs for your units, you can't have that. No warlord traits of any kind. Orders that high tech and arcana are gone. Mechanicum players can't use that, so they can't use like Myrmidons, for example. In fact, Myrmidons are out anyway because they've got more than 3 wounds. Heavy support squads are a 0 to 2 choice. And then rapier squads are a 0 to 1 choice. Now, what we don't want is just like mass Volkite squads, but also, it'd be nice to see small squads of like heavy flamers and things like that, stuff that we don't usually see in this kind of meta. So some other features of Civil War Plus is going to be the battlefield size is 48 to 48, so 4x4. So it's slightly more squish. Everything's just slightly more together. Yes, you have fewer units, I understand that, but you're playing on a smaller area. There'll be more, as a result, there'll be more terrain, but also you're going to be on top of each other much quicker than you would in a normal game. Zone Mortalis core reactions only, so the 3 reactions that you get from Zone Mortalis, that's it. There's nothing more than that. It's just those three. Each player has one Zone Mortalis core reaction per phase only. That's it. Again, that's all you get. No Legion or Mechanicum specific reactions. So if you're an Imperial Fist player, I'm not picking on you for any particular reason. It's just that I'm going to be taking Imperial Fists to this event. So if you go within 10 inches of the Imperial Fist, they usually be able to do an out of sequence charge. None of that. That's gone. Okay, so you can't have any of that. No unit may react more than once per phase, despite war gear or special rules. All non-vehicle units count as scoring units, with line as super scoring that cannot be denied except by other lines. So it does mean like your heavy support squads, they are scoring. It does mean your tactical support squads are scoring. It means your seeker squads are scoring. Etc. etc. So basically everything is scoring. But if it's got line, then it's super scoring. So it does encourage you to take some line units. Sure, you can take seekers, but you'll be outscored by those people who've taken like things that already have existing line within their data slate, within their rules. Okay, so there's just something to bear in mind if you're thinking, oh, I'll take nothing but seekers. Okay, but you might be outscored in that scenario by people who've taken nothing but tactical squads. So just bear that one in mind. Units can't be pinned under any circumstances. We found that pinning was just a little bit too strong, and the same for morale checks at 25%. Basically, it was a classic feel bad moment, which is that you got so few units to play around with in 1,000 points, that if you you lose more than 25% of your models in that unit, and then they run off the board. It's just like, I basically can't play, or I just can't engage with this game anymore. So we got rid of that. However, what I will say is that morale checks are still in effect in close combat, as they usually would be. If you lose a combat, you got to take a morale check, and then also you can be rammed. So if you're taking rhinos and sabers and things like that, that's something to bear in mind, which is that it just gets round slightly some of those that 25% plus rule. So rhinos will really come into effect, because if you ram, you're going to force a morale check. So just something to bear in mind. So you will need to take some measure of anti-tank, because there might be rhinos, and they are quite dangerous in Civil War. And that's good, because if a ginormous tank came towards you, it would be very dangerous, right? Okay, that's just I think we want to keep that and encourage that. If you want to take these rules and adapt them though, and play differently with your friends, please feel free. This is just what Heresy Hammer are doing. But if you want to change it and adapt it slightly, be my guest, no problem at all. So a model with a 2-up save may only be allocated wounds up to their initiative value. So that's a rule brought in by SN. We slightly changed it, so with SN, if it's got a 2-up armor save anyway, they can take it as many times as they want to. But if you're a Centurion, you've got initiative 5, you can only save it up to 5 times. One thing I'd say is that it does mean things like heavy flamers, for example, or just flamers, become much stronger, because you can't just tank it on that 2-up save. So bear that one in mind. It'd be nice to see units that we don't usually see at this event. Deep strike of any kind is not allowed. However, you can outflank units. And then activation of units is randomized. I'll get more onto that in a bit. And then an auxiliary marshal can be given the cohort's doctrine rule for free. So we did feel it was right to give solar orcs just a little bit of a leg up. With their rules, but the auxiliary marshal, not the legate marshal, gains the cohort doctrines rule. So just something to bear in mind. So in terms of the missions, the missions are really straightforward. I haven't even done pictures. Hopefully the explanations are just simple enough. And again, we just want this to be really simple rule set. A 2-pager, everything really simple. So in terms of the battle preparations, you need to agree on your terrain with your opponent. That goes without saying. That's always really important to do at the start of a game. You roll to see who places the first objective marker. That person places it first, then the opponent places, and then you keep on going, vice versa, until there's no objective markers left. You roll to see who deploys first, and then that person, whoever wins that roll off, then deploys their whole army, unless they've got infiltrators, or unless they're outflanking something, and then that's then followed by their opponent. And then at that point, you perform any infiltrating scouts. If you've both got infiltrators, then you can roll off for it as you usually would, and then you take it in turns to do your infiltrators. And then if you've both got scout moves, then do exactly the same, which is just roll off and then see who's got scouts as normal. And then there's no seize the initiative because it's not necessary because the activation is totally randomized. There's no seize the initiative in this, right? So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, that person's won the first turn roll off, it doesn't matter too much because it's just completely randomized. So it does matter if you get unlucky and you don't get any of your things pulled out first, but that is out of my hands. I've tried to randomize it as best I can. So in terms of the missions, I won't go through them in full detail. You can have a look at this 2-pager for the Civil War Plus rule set in your own leisure time. But essentially, the first game is objective scoring. Okay, so it's just an objective game, nice introduction, nice and easy. Especially with when you do events and there's new rules that people haven't encountered before, it's really important not for it to be not too complicated. So just getting used to it. So it's just a simple objective game, and then this has got 4 objective markers: 2 in the no man's land, 1 in deployment zone, and 1 in the other deployment zone as well. So just 4 objective markers up for grabs, and then you can kill some character models for some extra VPs, but there's no secondaries. It's literally what it says there. That is the mission. Mission 2. So we're getting a little bit more complicated this time. So here you can control deployment zones, but also score using objective markers as well if you hold it at the start of your turn. So again, we're just layering on a little bit of complexity. You've got to do multiple things, which is you get to objective markers, but you've got to hold 2 in order to gain 1 objective marker, but also you can get VPs for being in your deployment zone. So as it says here, score 2 VP for each line unit within your enemy deployment zone at the end of the game, and score 1 VP for any non-vehicle unit with the enemy deployment zone at the end of the game as well. So again, line, we said this before, line is super scoring. So if you haven't got line in your list, that's absolutely fine. Perhaps you've got a themed list, so that's no problem. You can still score, but just remember line is still important all throughout these. And then mission 3 is the most complicated one, but I think personally it's the most fun one, and it's definitely good. You could do this one as the Civil War the Warhead guys did this as a free for all, like a 4-player free for all, and like that is so much fun. So if you have 4 players and an evening or a Saturday or a Sunday or something, and you just want to play a game for the day, like do mission 3, but do a 4-person free for all. It's wild, it's crazy. We can't do it for this event because it's the last game of the event, and I recognize people need to get home at a reasonable time on a Sunday, but as I say, it's really, really good free for all, this one. So basically it's an 18-inch square deployment zone. You're going in corners, so opposite corners. It's 4 turns again. There's 5 objective markers in total. We have 1 in the center, and then 4 in the quadrant, so 1 in each quadrant, of course. Objective markers all start with 0 kind of tokens on, with the exception of the central one. So that starts with 1 VP token. Just use dice to kind of move them up. At the beginning of every turn, after turn 1, a VP token is added to your every objective that were not scored during the previous turn. So if nobody scored by the time we got to turn 2, that central objective would be worth 2 VP, and those outer objectives in the quadrants would be worth 1 VP. By the time we got to the third turn, that central objective would be worth 3 VP, and then the outer ones would be 2 VP if nobody scored it, right? But the thing is that the objectives get the objective markers, the tokens increase as time goes on, but you can grab those objective markers, grab those tokens if you can claim that objective. So, by the end of the game, that central objective will be worth 4 VP. If you grab it at the end, you've grabbed that objective marker and you've grabbed the points for it. So at the beginning of every turn after turn 1, 1 VP token is added to every objective that were not scored during the previous turn. Players score VPs on any objectives they hold at the end of the game turn. They may also decide not to score any points, waiting for the VP tokens to accumulate as well. A unit engaged in close combat may not score for an objective, even if they are lined. So that's just something to bear in mind. So there is a bit of a risk. It's important to recognize that if you take the points at the end of your turn, they don't automatically just start again on the next turn. You've got to wait a whole turn before those points kind of like build up. So there is an incentive just to like hunker down, try and hold those VPs or hold that objective for as long as possible, so it accumulates as many points as possible, and then grab it at the last minute. But the problem is, in that scenario, you might get shot off the objective, you might get assaulted off the objective, so there's some risk, some reward there. As I say, it's a lot of fun, but just remember that the most important bit is that at the beginning of every turn after turn 1, +1 VP token is added to every objective that were not scored during the previous turn. So bear that one in mind. But fun missions, and we hope you enjoy them. So this is the part that probably needs the most amount of explaining, because it's the part that's most different from what we understand as Horus Heresy. So what I'll do is I'll read it through for you, and then I'll add any notes that I've got. Now, every player coming to this event will be given a Heresy Hammer kind of dice bag, and you can see here the size of it. Now, this dice bag is actually going to double up, though, as our counter bags. And in terms of the counters, we have provided our players with the counters. What I would recommend is that you get some glass beads for this. So it's all very well kind of saying dice, and you can do dice, that's absolutely fine. But the problem with dice is that everyone has different sized dice, and there's no guarantee that you will have and lots of people have different coloured dice as well. So there's no guarantee that your opponent will have the same size dice as you, and they'll have 10 units, and they've got 10 the same coloured dice. So I would recommend just buying some cheap glass bead counters that are different colours. I've bought 750 blue ones and 750 white ones for the event that people can use. But I just think that it's just slightly easier and gets around that. So if you are thinking about playing Civil War plus rules, or even Civil War, just from the Warhead guys, just get some glass beads, carry them around with you. You don't need many. They're the kind of things that go into like vases and things like that, and look good. So random activations explained. So each player will be given different coloured counters, as we talked about. Okay, so I'll take the blue counters, and then my opponent Fred will take the white counters. Right? They will have as many counters as they have units on the table. So if I've got 8 units on the table, I will have 8 counters. All right. Nice and straightforward. Both players must put these counters into the draw bag. So you have to mix them up. Now, each of you will get a bag, but you only need to play a game with one bag. Okay, so each of you gets a bag, but you only need one bag to actually play your game. All right, so you have to choose which person's bag you want to play with. So both players must put these counters into the draw bag. So I would have 8 blue counters, and my opponent Fred has 6 white counters. So just bear that in mind, though, because I've got more counters, I've got more of a chance to be able to pick mine first, right? So just something to bear in mind. If my opponent Fred only had 2 counters, two units on the board, because he's gone for big hefty units worth 500 points each, he's only going to have 2 counters. I'm going to be able to run rings around him in terms of like how many counters are being pulled out. So it's just something to bear in mind, especially with the number of units you got on the table. So at the beginning of all phases, count the current number of surviving separate units and update the counter number put into the draw bag. Units leaving dedicated transfers will need an additional counter placed into the bag at the start of the next phase. So that's really important. Let's say at the end of the shooting phase, I've lost 2 units. That means that I'll only have 6 counters going into the bag at the start of the assault phase. So at the beginning of each phase, you do need to be cognizant. If you've lost any units, does that mean that counters need to come out of bags? If things have left dedicated transports, does that mean that things need to come out, need to be put into the bag? So if you're putting additional units onto the table, it does mean that you're going to need to put more counters into the bag. So something to bear in mind. During the game, instead of the usual turn structure, counters are drawn from the bag at random, one at a time. The colour indicates which player gets to activate one of their units next. Designate a different player to pull the counters at the start of each turn. So don't just have one person pulling it out like for the whole of the game. Just swap it each turn. So you do 2 turns of pulling out, and then your opponent does 2 turns of pulling out. Up to you how to do it, but it's probably best just to alternate it. So this is how the turn structure works, and this is actually slightly different from the Civil War rule set. So this is slightly tweaked and slightly different. So if you are familiar with the Warhead Civil War rule set, this is slightly different. So this is really important. So what we'll do is we'll work through the movement phase first. We do all our units. We put the counters into the bag. Then we do the shooting phase. We use all our units. And then we do the assault phase. We use all our units, right? So that's really important, because in the original Civil War set, basically you pulled the unit, or we pull the counter, you activate the unit, they do their movement, they do their shooting, and they do their assaults all in one go. That's not the same for Civil War Plus. It is slightly different. So you so for the movement phase, you pull a counter out the bag. Whichever player's counter was pulled from the bag, they get to activate their unit during the movement phase, i.e. they may make their move, all right? And then so once that unit's been done, just put that counter to the side, just collect it in a pool, and then you continue to draw from the bag that you can't see into. You continue to draw counters, and then whoever's color gets picked, that person gets to activate a unit. Now you can choose which unit you activate. It's completely up to you, and there will be occasions where it's more important to activate certain units than other units. That's why the pulling that is so important, pulling the right counter out at the right time. But the counters are not matched with a unit. Once you pull a counter, it's just an activation that you can do. So once the bag is empty, all units should have had their movement. It might be that you just go, I pulled this, but I'm just going to skip it because I don't want to use it just yet. Once at that point, once all the units that can move have moved, and then all the counters have been taken out of the bag, you basically refill the bag with the correct number of counters ready for the shooting phase. Now the movement phase is important here, and then counting is important because things may have been taken out of dedicated transports. Okay, that's important. Things may have rammed other things as well, and they may have fled off the board. So that's another thing to bear in mind. So then we're ready for the shooting phase, and the process is exactly the same. So I'll go through this again. So you pull a counter of the bag. Whichever player's counter was pulled from the bag may activate their unit during the shooting phase. So I pull out a unit, and it happens to be, and I go, okay, my Volkite Heavy Support Squad, or I pull out a counter, my Volkite Heavy Support Squad, I'm going to shoot at that unit, right? And then once they've done, and they've shot, and maybe my opponent's reacted or not, I then put the counter to the side, ready to be put back in at the start of the assault phase. So you work your way through the counters that way. Whichever player's counter was pulled from the bag may activate the unit during the shooting phase. They may make a shooting attack, continue the process until all units have been activated. Once the bag is empty, all units should have completed their shooting phase. I will adjust that on my rules, just checking for edits there. You refill the bag with the correct number of counters ready for the assault phase. And then you go to the assault phase. So this is more complicated, the assault phase, because every unit, unlike the shooting phase, every unit is not going to be able to unlike the movement phase, every unit's not going to be able to assault. And also, just to say on the shooting phase, if you don't want a unit to shoot, you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to pass on this unit. I don't want to shoot. So the assault phase, a little bit different, so we'll go through it. So again, you pull a counter out of the bag. Whichever player's counter was pulled from the bag may activate the unit during the assault phase, i.e. they may make a charge. Okay, so basically the assault phase is they can make a charge. Continue this process until units that are able and capable of making charge have charged. And you may notice that some units that you wanted to activate may not be able to activate as they have been charged. Now, that's really important. And that's really important, the order of how they're picked out the bag, because you might be quite close to your opponent and you want to charge them, but your opponent might want to charge you. So depending on who pulls it out, that person will be able to get to charge that unit, and they get all the benefits of being able to charge. So that's something to bear in mind. So at this point in the assault phase, it does matter. But that does mean that if I charge my opponent who's got charged, they can't activate that unit, they can't move, they can't get out of it, and they can't recharge me. That's not how the game works, right? So it's basically like, okay, well, I can't do anything with that. So you may notice that some units that you wanted to activate may not be able to activate as they're being charged. As we said, it is not unusual in this phase that you do not need to pull out all of the counters before all the units that can potentially activate have activated. At this stage, resolve the combats as normal, agreeing with your opponent which to start with. So you just, once they've gotten in and charged, you've done your reactions, then you just go, should we start with this one? Yeah, we might as well start with this one. Okay, it doesn't really matter which order, but you basically just resolve all the combats as you would usually do. And then at this stage, resolve combats as normal, agreeing with your opponent which to start with, refill the bag with the correct number of counters ready for the next movement phase. And then that will start turn 2. Okay, so basically you do the movement phase both together, then you do the shooting phase both together, then you do the assault phase both together, and then that's it. And then you're ready to rock and roll. And then you do that 4 times essentially. So what I would say about the Civil War Plus rule set is it is very fast and very pacey and very engaging. It's not like you're just waiting for your opponent to do their turn. You've got a couple of reactions within that, but apart from that, you're not doing anything. It's a constant backwards and forwards process, and what makes it quite tactical is the fact that depending on the order of the way things are pulled from the bags will depend on which of your priority units will go first, okay, and then your opponent has to factor that in as well. So in that way, it's even though it's a slimmed back rule set, it can be quite a tactical game, all because of that bag. All right, I hope that all makes sense, and I hope you kind of have enjoyed listening to me go through the Civil War Plus rule set. If you've got any questions, just put them in the comments down below. Of course, thanks to everybody who supports us. This is a very, very slimmed down video. This one, very, very basic. So we will be back to normal with how the show usually runs in the format, and with the other lads as well. But just to say, thanks for supporting us as always. If you're attending the event, thanks for attending our events as well. If you got this far on the video, we've got a special announcement, hopefully by the end of this month. So keep your eyes out for that one. If you are a Heresy event organizer across the UK, the likeliness is we have probably got in contact with you by the time this event goes out, but it will directly link to all Heresy event organisers across the UK. So if you do organise events, or you know somebody who organises an event, tell them to get in contact with us via email. Because we've got some news for you, which is going to be pretty big, and hopefully help everybody in the UK get to as many events as possible. Keep an eye on that one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You can email us on the heresyhammer30k@gmail.com. If you like Heresy content, then we do loads more via our Patreon. So please go support us via our Patreon for as little as £3 a month. But we have various tiers, which you can go check out as well. We are available via podcasting sources as well. And don't forget, if you look for our links on Instagram, if you go to the link tree there, you can join our WhatsApp community page, where it's got like hundreds of people on those WhatsApp community groups, all talking Heresy every minute of the day. So you can go join there as well. Anyway, I hope that's you've enjoyed the video, and I hope that's all clear. And I hope from this you will be able to start your Civil War Plus journey. Take care, guys, and I shall see you on the next one.